anyone ever had sleep paralysis before I tell you, it's one of the strangest, most fascinating yet horrifying things that you could experience. It's the feeling of being unable to move upon awakening. Your senses and awareness are intact, but you still feel as though you were in this half-asleep, half-awake state. I'd heard stories of this long before it happened to me. I've only experienced it once. I was in college. I was going through an incredibly tough time in my life. I was insanely stressed during finals week. I wasn't getting much sleep. It must have been the night before my last final. I went to bed late because I stayed up all night studying for bio. I don't remember at what point I decided to finally call it. I just remember it all. Becoming a blur, then blackness. Next thing I remember, I was in my room in my bed. But there was this weird haziness in my awareness, like I was awake, but I felt weaker when I tried to move. I could only move my eyes to look. Around the dark room, at one point when I guessed I was looking to one side of the room, I looked back to the center and there was this woman standing dead center in the room facing the bed. She was wearing this black dress and holding some long objects. I wanted to call out Mom, but my paralysis prevented it. I couldn't say anything. The woman came closer to me until she knelt down and touched my forehead, and I could feel it. She got eye to eye with me, and I could see my mother's face. I tried to say Mom again desperately, but I was stuck in my own body. She stood back up and walked to the doorway before disappearing into the house. I lay there unable to move, maybe another 10 to 20 seconds before my vision suddenly became more clear. I was able to think more clearly as well. I was able to sit up. I jumped out of the bed screaming Mom over and over. I ran to the bedroom hallway yelling her name. A door opened down the hall and someone came to hug me, but it wasn't my mom. It was my dad telling me he misses her too. My mom died 3 weeks before this happened. You know what I love about dreams? How vague and how bizarre they can be. You feel like you're in this separate world where things can just make no sense. Now what about when that unearthiness transcends into the quote-unquote real world? You'll see what I mean in a minute. I was in REM sleep having this bizarre nightmare about being followed by some weird creature in the middle of the woods. The dream became fuzzy, though, and I kinda woke up from it. I say kind of, because while I was out of the dream and back in my bed, I couldn't move a muscle on my body. I started hearing this faint, weird noise. It was this indescribable robotic, yet alive type sound. It started light and soft, but it repeated every 3 seconds. I noticed it was getting slightly louder. Every time I felt like the sound was getting closer, it got so unbearably loud in my head I just wanted to scream, but I couldn't then. My eyes locked onto the closet door, specifically the crack in the closet door which I never leave open ever. There was this distorted face of a man looking between the crack with this unhumanly large open-mouthed smile, and every time I heard the noise it seemed as if the closet and the face were getting closer until the closet door slammed shut and everything went silent. I regained control of my body shortly after that, and the first thing I did, even though I was 24 years old, was run to my parents' room to get my dad to check the closet with me. There was nothing in the closet though, or the rest of my room. My dad seemed pretty confident that what I just experienced was sleep paralysis, and that he had experienced it once didn't make me feel any less disturbed about what I just went through many years ago. I had a sleep paralysis experience. I knew there was a thing in my closet, something really evil, but I also knew I was dreaming and I should face my fear. I tried not to look directly at the closet door, but if I moved my eyes, my head would turn away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't look directly at it. Then I woke up in a cold sweat. At first, I felt really relieved that it was over, but very shortly, I realized it wasn't a dream, and there was really something in the closet. I was laying on my back and couldn't move. I didn't really hear it, but I could kind of feel the sickening laughter wash over me in waves emanating from the closet. All of a sudden, the thing throws a human head at me, and it lands on my chest face up. It was this girl I knew in high school. Up to this point, I was kind of holding it together, terrified but not panicked. Well, I lose it now I can. To even scream, all I could do was make these grunting sounds and moaning noises. I'm wriggling and straining, trying to rock from side to side to get it off me, but I can't move. This seemed to last maybe another minute or two, and then I really woke up. It was so traumatic that for weeks I would be scared when I woke up that I wasn't actually awake, and something horrible could happen at any second. It still makes my skin crawl when I think about that laugh. The thing is, I never heard of sleep paralysis or night terrors. At that point in my life, I thought I was losing my mind. I've suffered sleep paralysis a total of 3 times in my life. The first 2 times, it just consisted of me waking up, not being able to move my body. The third time was much different, though I had woken up very early morning, probably like between 5 and 6 a.m. when the sun was just starting to come up. There was light in the room, but barely any. I tried to move, but I had that unfortunately familiar feeling of paralysis, helplessness, my eyes fixated on the wall. There was nothing I could do. Then suddenly I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs of my bedroom. It was my brother, followed by my sister, dad, and mom. They were all sobbing hysterically, and they all seemed to be at least a foot taller. It was unnerving. The 4 of them approached my bed, then stopped at the bedside, towering over me, all 4 of them crying. I couldn't move. I wanted to cry for help or just yell at them to stop because they were scaring me. Their heights, they looked like they were near to hitting the ceiling. Then, just as quickly as they entered, all 4 of them turned and walked back down the stairs. I could move again, and so I ran down the stairs to follow them, but they weren't in the outside area. I went to each of their rooms. One at a time, all 4 of them were fast asleep. My heart was racing because the most surreal, unnerving thing just happened to me. I had to lean on the wall to gather my thoughts for a second. Breathing heavily, falling back asleep was futile. The rest of the night I lay awake until the sun was fully up. A few days later, I was struck by a speeding car when crossing the road with friends and ended up with 3 broken bones and a fractured thigh bone. I was hospitalized for a week, and at one point all 4 of my family members stood next to my hospital bed looking down at me, my mom being emotional and crying. It was almost the same image from my sleep paralysis. I'm not superstitious at all, but if I were, I would 100% believe that dream was some kind of sign or some kind of prediction of the future. In fact, I just got chills writing that last sentence, thinking about it. There was this one time I was out late drinking with friends. It was some point in the summer of 2016. We were kind of just walking around town, and then around the neighborhood, when one of my friends spotted someone hiding in a bush. He pointed and said, "Look," and we all walked a little closer to get a better look. We could see what he was talking about, but just barely. It was bizarre, like someone hiding in this bush in front of this house. When we got too close, apparently this weird, off-putting sound started coming from the bush, so we all screamed and laughed and ran away. We screamed because it was scary, but left because at the same time it was bizarrely funny, and there were a lot of us. So anyway, we walked back to our houses respectively, assuming whoever was in that bush was just messing with people. I fell asleep pretty easily that night since I was drunk, but next thing I remember was waking up to the near pitch blackness of my room. I couldn't look at the clock to see what time it was because I literally couldn't move. I was in a sleep paralysis state. I looked around the room with my eyes only and started to hear a familiar noise, the noise we heard coming from that bush. Then I looked straight in front of me at the foot of my bed, and what I saw was pure nightmare fuel. It was what appeared to be this floating, grotesque, horrific head of a demonic ghost-like thing. As it got closer to me, I realized it wasn't floating. There was a body, but its body blended in with the blackness of the room. Its mouth hung open, and it just kept making the familiar noise from the bush. It got mere inches from my face before it suddenly just faded away. I was able to let out a scream and move my body. I sat in my bed, panting and heart racing. I flicked on the lamp and checked around my bed, but that demonic thing was gone. What I just experienced seemed so real, like I was awake for it. It wasn't a dream. I told my parents about it the next day, and they agreed with me that it was sleep paralysis, though they had never heard of anyone seeing freaky like that before. You